Hello, my name is LoG, and welcome to part 3 of this chord inversion power-up. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. And now let's get on to the lesson. All right, this is the last chord of the batch, but let's first recap the first two that we have already done, the C sharp minor 7 and the C major 7. So I'll run through all of those one more time just in case. C sharp minor 7, root in the bass, third in the bass, fifth in the bass, 7 in the bass, and then finally root in the bass up top, backwards. Again, running them like that, like an exercise, probably a good idea. The next one, C major 7, root in the bass, third in the bass, fifth in the bass, 7 in the bass, root in the bass up top, up an octave, backwards. Again, trying to memorize how you want to visually connect these as you're moving around on the fretboard, whatever you need to do. Now, the next chord we're going to go over today is going to continue moving back one fret, sort of like what we've been doing. We had C sharp right here, then we had C, and now the next chord is going to be on B, just back a fret. And this one's going to be suspended, or in particular, suspended 7. I wanted to do this one because, you know, there are a lot of different chord types out there. This one is a really useful one because it has a lot of like dual use. You can kind of use these chords, suspended chords in general, in a variety of situations, whereas, you know, major 7, minor 7, they kind of live in their world. Of course, you can kind of use those on top of other chords, but suspended chords are kind of cool because you can use the sound instead of minor, but you can also use it instead of dominant as well, and you can kind of use it instead of major 7 in a certain way if you played a certain way. I'm not really going to talk about that today. I just find them to be very valuable and just cool sounding, I guess. You can break it down to that. They sound cool. That's why we're doing them. And I don't think that they're that common of a chord type in a guitar player's repertoire. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've seen. So let's go over what the shapes are. We're doing this on B, of course, so we're down here, so that's our root. Guess what? The order of the notes going to be exactly the same. The only difference here is we don't have a 3, because that's the sound of suspended. Suspended chords don't have 3. That's the whole point of a suspended chord. You can't play a suspended chord if it's also got a 3 in it, right? To play an actual suspended chord, you have to have notes other than 3. So that could be a 2 instead of 3, or it can be a 4 instead of 3. Most of the time when people play suspended, it tends to be 4 instead of 3, because I think that note's a little bit stronger, has a little bit more of a pull. But of course, you can do whatever you want with the sound. I'm going to be playing this exact order. So root, 5th, flat 7, very similar to minor 7, right? Very similar, but I'm going to have 4 on top right here. How do I know that's 4? Because this was normal minor 7, that's flat 3. 4 is always just up a whole step from flat 3. So this is the chord I'm playing. Very common shape right here. The reason why this is so nice, like I mentioned earlier, this also lives in the minor world. So if you were playing B minor like this, B minor 7, you pop that pinky down, and now you're playing suspended, and you haven't really left the sound, because this sound lives inside that world. If I'm playing B minor, a 4 lives in there. It's in the pentatonic, right? There it is, 1, flat 3, 4. Like you're playing a pentatonic, so that note lives in that world. So you can, at any moment, if you're playing a minor chord, you can play suspended instead. And it will sound, sound perfectly fine. We'll live in that world. And it sounds cool. You get some extra stuff to play out of it. So that's kind of why I like the suspended sound. So again, here's our chord. That's the sound. And then the process of figuring out everything as we move through, exactly the same as we've done before. The only real difference that it kind of have to think about is there's no 3 in this chord. So as we create our inversions moving up the fretboard, we're not really looking for 3 in the bass because there is no 3, right? So instead of playing, root in the bass and then looking for the next one, looking for a 3 because there is no 3, we're actually looking for the next number, which is 4. So where would that be? 1, 2, flat 3, because we're kind of hinting at minor earlier, and then 4 is here, 1 to 4. So that's actually going to be the root, or not necessarily the root, but the bass note of the next inversion that we play. So again, I don't want to spend too much time doing this, so I'm just going to walk you through the chords. The first one's like this. Root moves up to 4, which is right here. This 5th moves up to flat 7, which is right there. Still have a flat 7. Flat 7 right here moves up to the root right there. So we have this, a little bit of a stretch. And then the pinky right here is 4, moves up to 5 right there. So this is the chord. Don't have to like these chords, don't have to use them, but it's kind of nice to know what they are because they can be really cool sounding. Okay, so again, here's the suspended right there. Here's the suspended right here with 4 in the bass. Also, if you're curious, let's A-B it with the minor 7 so you can see how similar they are. Here's the minor 7. Here's the suspended. Right, just playing the flat 3, my middle finger, popping the pinky down to play the 4. Here's the minor sevens inversion, right? We figured that one out earlier. We were just doing it on C sharp. Works exactly the same down here on B. There it is. That's the minor 7. What's the suspended? The flat 3 right here. Move it up to the 4 right there. Right? So you can interchange these two if you want to. Really cool sounds. Minor, suspended, minor, suspended, minor, suspended, minor, suspended. Just kind of awkward to grab. The next one, 5th in the bass, if I kept going on the same string, it would look like this, right? Which is a really nice chord because I'll talk about why in a second. We're not going to play it here though. We're going to play it right here, kind of like we've been doing this whole time. We play that 5th in the bass on the D string. So this shape will be the 5th, root, 4th, flat 7, like that. Kind of an interesting chord. There's a bunch of ways you can play it. You can bar and then play 2 fingers right here. You can bar, play 1 finger, kind of double barring. I kind of like doing it like this: pointer, middle, ring, pinky. I don't know why. I just kind of like doing that. I actually don't remember how I'm doing it in this playthrough, but you get the idea. Interesting thing about this chord is that it's all stacked fourths, meaning the distance between every note, the distance between these two and these two and these two, it's all 4 letters. Like that is a 4th, this is a 4th, that is a 4th, right? Creates a really unique sound that naturally lives in this suspended world. Really cool. This, of course, is the other way to play it up here. So how would this look in comparison to the minor shape with 5 in the bass? That would look like this. Right, that we already talked about that one. And then this is the suspended. Again, what we're doing, taking that flat 3, which is right here, pointer finger, moving up to 4. That's it. Really cool sound. Again, interchangeable. So here are the suspendeds. Suspended 7, right? 1, 5, flat 7, 4. Next one. Right, this is 4, flat 7, 1, 5. Kind of tricky, but pretty cool. Next one. 5, 1, 4, flat 7. Right? Next one looks like this. Right? So again, I'm just not going to methodically walk you through like I've done before. Just going to show you the shapes. This one right here, this is flat 7 in the bass. So flat 7, 4, 5, 1, like that. What was the minor shape? Really simple. Just see that ring finger? Lift it up. That's the minor 7. The flat 7, flat 3, 5, 1. All we're doing is taking that flat 3, getting rid of it, playing the 4. That's our suspended. You can easily go back and forth between these two. A lot of cool stuff you can do with that one, right? That's just jumping back and forth between the normal minor 7 and the suspended variant. Let's run them all one more time. First one, root in the bass. 4th in the bass, right? Not 3, 4th in the bass. 5 in the bass. 7 in the bass. And then we finish with the next one, root in the bass again, which is up top right here, right? And what was the minor shape? Remember, it looked like this. 1, 5, flat 7, flat 3, like that. Just taking the 3, popping it up 2 frets, like that, if I can get it right. That's the chord. Pretty easy to play, actually. 1, 5, flat 7, 4. This is literally the same thing as this. 1, 5, flat 7, 4, just up an octave. Of course, it looks different because of the guitar tuning, but you get the idea. So let me run through all of those. I'll go up and back. First one. Next one, a little stretchy. One thing I have noticed about this chord, you're kind of hearing it right there, because of the awkwardness of the stretch, sometimes I tend to push down a little bit too hard with my middle finger or maybe slightly bend the string like that, which kind of knocks it out of tune. So that's okay right there. So that's one problem I have had to kind of work with. So if you're noticing that, just try to see if you can move your fingers around a little bit more, maybe press down that middle finger a little less. That's a little bit better right there to make sure it's a little bit more in tune. Of course, you can maybe try some other fingerings with this, but that's the one I'm using. Root in the bass, 4th in the bass, like that, kind of a stretch. 5th in the bass right here, however you want to play it, just like that. And then 7 in the bass like this, really simple, just the bar, but you're adding in the G string up 2 frets. Do that with pinky or ring, whichever you want. Kind of like the ring, because then I can do stuff with the pinky if I want, kind of cool. Next one looks like this, pointer, ring, middle, pinky, just like that. Those top strings. And let's go backwards. Root in the bass, 7 in the bass, 5th in the bass, 4th in the bass, and then finally root in the bass. So honestly, the 4th in the bass shape might, because you're playing the 4th in the bass and not a 3, it's actually probably pretty easy to find if you are looking here in this same position. So for example, the 4, if this is your root, the 4 would actually be here, right? So that's actually pretty easy to play. If you wanted to play flat 3, we're probably playing open strings at this point, but that's not too bad. So maybe we can play this chord also right here on the D string, kind of like we did with the 5 in the bass. What would that look like? It would look like this, right? This is an open string. If I just played the movable version, it would look like this. So a little bit easier to play. So this is not the same chord, but just so you can see the shape and kind of get it down. So this one I would be playing here on A is my root note, my bass note. That's the same as this. Right, so this one's a little bit trickier to play, a little bit more stretchy. So if you're in the situation where you can play the D string version, it is a little bit easier, right? So you can try that if you want. Today, we're not going to be doing that, though. We're just going to be playing this, and then that stretchy one, and then continuing. Those are the shapes, so practice those, get them down, work them out exactly like we talked about before, back and forth between them all, whatever you need to do to get them down. Run through different patterns, notice connections, memorize like visually how you want to connect them, do whatever you need to do. And now let's get on to how we're going to apply a melody to these shapes, just like we did for the other ones. All right, so the melody idea for this chord is pretty much exactly the same as the major 7. So let's just run through what we got. First chord, normal. Second chord, that 4 in the bass, the stretchy one, we're barring the pointer finger to grab the high E string. Just like that. Very similar to what we did right here. If you remember that stretchy major 7, grabbing the high string, doing the same thing here. Next chord, normal. Right, next chord, normal chord like this, just playing it once, then adding the pinky high E string up 2 frets, kind of the 2 of the chord. That's why I mentioned earlier, play with the ring finger so you have your pinky that can move around and do stuff. Next chord, normal. Back to here. Same exact thing as what you just did. Normal chord, add the pinky. Normal chord. Here, same thing. Play the chord, grab the high E string, and then the normal chord back to the beginning. So let me play that whole thing, sing the melody so you can hear kind of what it sounds like. So, bum, 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 bum. Cool melody. That's one of my favorite ones. This chord in particular is kind of interesting. Just as a little side note. This note on top that we're adding is the 6 of the chord. So it's like a suspended chord with a 6. It's a really cool voicing. Sounds like this. If I play it in the normal shape right here, it's our normal root position. Adding that top note, which is 6. How do I know that? Because that's 5, right? 1 is here, up a power chord like that or like this. 5, 6 right there. So it sounds like this. Really cool sound, right? It works really perfect if you're playing in a situation where 6 is already a note that you can play. So if you're playing like back and forth between that and dominant, like this, right? Suspended with 6 on top. Hear that note, bum, on top. That's always 6. Really cool. Or if you're playing minor with 6, you're playing like a 2 chord, like that kind of vamp. You can switch back and forth there too. Suspended with the 6, minor with the 6. Really cool stuff you can do with that one. A really, really great sound. That's kind of what we're getting here when we play this chord, adding that note on top, that natural 6. Pretty cool. So that's the sound. The picking pattern is exactly the same. I don't honestly really need to talk about it. I'll just play it. I'll play it one time through. Everything that we're doing so far is exactly the same, right? We start with the ring finger, same little pattern, pick, middle pick, just like that. Then the second chord, the ring finger plays twice here and there, right, alongside the middle finger. In this case, we have that string in between us, just like normal. Right, next chord, normal. Same thing here. Ring finger, then ring finger again to play the melody. Same thing on the way back. So if you've already done that pattern, if you're already comfortable with it, just apply it here. It's exactly the same. So yeah, this suspended sound is cool. It's one of my favorite sounds that you can use. I mean, I'm doing it in chords right now, but you can also do it if you want to try it over your leads. Like if you're playing B minor, instead of playing minor 7 or something, you can do suspended instead. Really cool sound that you can kind of sneak in there alongside the minor, and it kind of brings out this flavor that's not really minor or I mean, of course it's not minor major, there's no third in it, but it has this really unique sound that I personally really like on top of a lot of things. So that's what these chords are. So that's pretty much it. Let's get on to these backing tracks. First track is going to be just the suspended, exactly what I just did with all of our melodies, etc. Then the next one is going to be the major 7, C major 7, exactly what we did in the previous one. Same exact chords, and then the suspended, right, back and forth. Remember, when you're coming down that major 7, right, like this, moving back, when you hit this chord, we don't restart back to the root position of the C. We're jumping right down to the suspended. So you might have to work on that fingering. This one, immediately down to here, right? Run it once. Normal chords. Then when you hit this one, jump it right back to C major 7, moving like that. So that's what we'll do for the second track. First track, just suspended. Second track, C major 7 to be suspended, back and forth. And then once you have these down, that's every chord for this entire power up. And in the final video, we'll do all 3 of them: C sharp minor, C major 7, B suspended, then back to C major 7, and then the whole thing over again. So before we get there, let's wrap up these final 2 chords, in particular the suspended chord, with these backing tracks. All right, that does it for part 3 of this chord inversion power-up. As usual, if you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you all in the final part.